Hello everyone, the Bronzor Cup, also known as the Little Cup, is in Go Battle League right now, and I managed to get 16 wins in a row. First off, Bronzor is absolutely everywhere, so what is the best counter to it? You might think that it's Dano or Shadow Stanky or Poochyena or something, and they are good for sure, but actually the most consistent counter to Bronzor is Bronzor itself, but with Tackle as a fast move. That is the only Pokemon that can beat a Confusion Bronzor without shielding when the opponent has 2 shields. So a tackle-Bronzor is what I built my team around. I lead with Wynaut, and I also have a Darumaka in the back. So both of my sidekicks to Bronzor also checks my opponent's Confusion Bronzor fairly good, and Darumaka's main objective is to bring down Cottony and bug types. And I feel that it's kind of weird that there has been so little talk about Tackle Bronzor, considering that it is literally the only hard counter to a regular Bronzor. And also it has much better matchup against Dano, and it still beats Cottony. And in this video I have selected a few of the more interesting games from my 16 game win streak with this team. The first opponent in this video is Charizard, and this is game number 8 of the win streak, and he leads with Seal. And this matchup is totally only dependent on the fast move of Seal, since if it has Lick then it will destroy Wynaut, but this Seal has Ice Shard, so I'm going to win this lead matchup, which is nice for me. A lot of people run Ice Shard to be strong against Whimsicott and against Dino, but thankfully for me this is a positive matchup. So I go straight for the Mirror Coats, and my opponent switches out into Nincada, and this is the first time I've ever faced a Nincada in any battle at all, so I didn't know what to do, but thankfully I have my Daramaka that can farm down all the way, and I will spend my shield here, because I know that Daramaka is way more glassy than Bronzor, so by spending my shield I will get much more value from the shield. And here I will shield again, because I didn't expect the Seal to be able to reach another Aqua Tail, but actually it's just able to reach one more. So I will have to put all of my faith into Bronzor, and my opponent has a regular Confusion Bronzor in the back. So now at this point I know I've won, because I will easily be able to just chunk down with tackles. And the reason that tackle deals is so much better in the mirror is because tackle actually is a 1-turn fast move, so every single tackle deals exactly 1 damage, and the Confusions only deal 2 damage, so my fast move damage is exactly twice the amount of my opponent's. My next opponent is Smarty Pants, and this is game number 10 of the win streak, and she leads with Cottony, so this is a lost lead for me. And I have a little bit of lag right here, but I'm going to switch into Daramaka, and just like that, half of the HP of Cottony is gone because of Fire Fang on Daramaka. And then my opponent switches in the Dino, so this is great. Even though it's not a terrible matchup for Tackle Bronzor, it's still nice that I don't have to deal with it with Bronzor, and that I can have my Wynaut against the Dino, because this is a very positive matchup for me. So I farm down, and my opponent sends in her own Bronzor, so there's no point in using my Mirror Coats in that matchup since they are double resisted. So I save the Mirror Coats for the Cottony in the future, but my opponent switches out, and then at this point the game is over. So I'm going to speed up with 5 times the speed instead of regular double the speed. Just because the Tackle Bronzor will always beat a Confusion Bronzor, even though it takes a very long time. Next, in game number 13 of the win streak, I go up against Miyuremi, and she leads with Bronzor, so this is a lost lead for me, but it's actually not that bad, since my counters are neutral. So as long as I only use fast moves, I don't lose any value, but if I use a Mirror Coat, then that Mirror Coat is pretty much wasted. So after she uses a charge move, I switch into Darumaka, and she counter switches into Dano. So that's great that I have baited out the Dano, and my Bronzor will not have to face it. So now I can have slightly more value, even though this is also double resisted. Dino is not as tanky as Bronzor, so I get some value of the mirror coat. And then I will farm this down, and my opponent sends in Cottony. And this is great for me, because now I will still have good value from these mirror coats. And the reason she sends in Cottony and not Bronzor is because everyone runs a Bronzor on their team. So she doesn't want the Cottony to go up against my Bronzor later in the game. But actually, that works out great for me, since I have tackle on my Bronzor, and I will easily be able to farm down this opposing Bronzor. And here I always overcharge a lot, so that if the Cottony comes in, I have a ton of extra energy, so that I can KO it. And my opponent tries to do some switching shenanigans, but the tackle-Bronzor has a very good matchup against both the Bronzor and Cottony. Next up is game number 14 of the win streak, and I go up against Macy Asen, and he leads with Vulpix. So this is a good matchup, because I win just of pure total damage output. So I go straight for the mirror coat and get a shield. And then I will not shield the first charge move, because hopefully it is a bait, but if it is a flame charge, then the next charge move will deal more damage. So I will shield the next one instead. And I go for another mirror coat, and my opponent will make another flame charge, and this time I'm shielding. And if I want to win this lead matchup, I will have to use my last shield in case it has body slam. So that's why I switch out into Darumaka, and my opponent counter switches into Puchiana. So this is an amazing position for me, because now Daramaka with energy will be able to take out this Vulpix. And then my opponent's last Pokemon is Cottony, so he resigns, and I really like this game, because here Darumaka really got to shine. My next opponent is Omoidenet, and this is game number 15 of the win streak, and he leads with Bronzor, so once again a lost lead, but I will charge up for a mirror coat and let him use one charge move on me before switching into Darumaka. And then my opponent counter switches into Shadow Stunky immediately, so now I will be able to force a shield if he wants to maintain switch advantage, but then I can get a ton of value from this mirror coat from Wynout, because now he's very likely not going to shield since it's his last shield. And now we're back at the beginning, except that I have a shield advantage. So now my switch timer is not up yet, so to not hit 100 energy I will have to use my mirror coat, even though I didn't want to. But then I can switch and tank that heavy slam. And here is the second great thing with Bronzor with tackle, that it has a much better matchup against Dino. So it actually beats Dino in the 2 shields if the Dino goes for crunches. So that is the main 2 reasons that I use tackle on my Bronzor, to beat the Bronzor mirror and to beat Dino. But then my switch timer is up, so I want to save some health on my Bronzor. So I switch in Wynout and KO the Dino, and then in this position, if we time out I win, and if I can get the Bronzor lower than my own Bronzor so that my tackle-Bronzor will win the mirror, then I also win. So I go straight for the mirror coats, and my opponent KOs me, and then I have a slight energy advantage, and my opponent realized that my tackle is going to beat him. My last opponent in this run is Danny Kvuv, and he leads with Cottony. And this is a bad matchup, so I have no reason to stay in really. So I switch into Darumaka, and he counter switches into Carvana, and he deletes me, and then I delete him with counter damage. And we could have been back where we started, but my opponent reads from my team that Cottony probably has a better matchup against my last Pokemon, which I think is a weird read, since most people run Bronzor in this cap. So yeah, I will shield that heavy slam, since that's the best place to use my second shield, because I will only need 1 shield on my Bronzor against his Cottony, and I have no reason to shield any of the heavy slams from his Bronzor on my Bronzor. So now my opponent stays in, which is also a mistake, because that means that I can farm up a ton of energy on my Bronzor to basically come out of this matchup with 100 energy. So I will use one heavy slam and then farm down all the way. And he even uses a shield, which is his second mistake, because that means that since I will have 2 heavy slams ready, or basically ready, almost ready, when he switches in Cottony, it will, at least one of them will connect, and then I will be able to cruise this game out. So after this connects, I will switch into my wineout that already has some stored energy, and I will use the second shield. And then I will KO him with a mirror coat and win this game. And then in the next game I went up against a Shelmet and it destroyed my wineout, and I didn't know what to do because I didn't manage to lock my Darumaka against it. So I had terrible problems with it. So that's where my streak died. Anyway, hopefully we will never have to play this version of Little Cup again, since it's incredibly boring and Bronzor is way too overpowered. And I should also mention that vullaby is actually the very best counter to Bronzor, but it is very hard to obtain since you have to hatch it on a low level account and then trade it to your main account. Thanks for watching!